Welcome into another week of Every Day We're Covering. Chris Parks, SJ Munoz with you once again to talk the wide world of sports and wagering. Have some fun with you along the way. We're glad you're with us here for another week, and we're getting oh so close now to some college football, and that's going to be the bulk of the program here today as we're going to make our conference championship picks as well as give you kind of a dark horse we're looking at in each of the major four conferences that now exist as well. So should be a lot of fun. SJ, it's always kind of amps up here a little bit. You seem like you wait forever, and then all of a sudden it's barreling down on you and you feel like you're hardly prepared, but we're definitely ready for football.
Yeah, it's kind of getting to that almost like it's just tough stages for me. I'm like, let's go. We're so close to it. Let's get this dang show on the road. But yeah, it's kind of like time flies, right? Somebody said that once.
Yeah.
But it does seem like it drags on forever, and then all of a sudden the season, and like before we know it, it's also going to be like midway through the season. Like, what the hell happened? You know?
Yeah.
So we got like I think we said that almost like on a weekly basis last season. It's like kind of just take it. Well, it's 1 week. Let's enjoy the week as it goes, and not look ahead too much because before you know it, then we're watching. We don't have the luxury of watching badminton and canoe and archery and all that stuff because the Olympics are done until another couple years at least if you want to watch the winter version.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I guess to me it's always like the life events too kind of you mix into stuff, so then you kind of get off track sometimes. Like like a couple weeks ago you're thinking, oh yeah, football's right around the corner, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you got to get the kids ready to go back to school, and the whole like routine is changing. You're kind of focused on that for a minute, and then it's like, oh crap, football really is starting now. Like it still feels like summer because of the weather, but then we're starting to play ball, and then of course once it gets into that fall mood, and then the weather starts to turn, then you really feel like you're in the midst of it. But just kind of interesting. Life throws things at you, and you always kind of feel not quite into it until some certain milestone, and usually I think for me it's kind of when that weather starts to change a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of remember used to like dreading the start of school, and like it's kind of like a bittersweet thing. So you're like, I don't want to go back to school, or I don't want to whatever, but I want football season to be here. So it's always kind of like to take the good with the bad. Now I'm like, screw. I like the weather wise, I prefer summer, but as far as like interest and what we like to do here, it's like, okay, come on, summer. We're done with you. Let's get someone here that matters and get some football going.
Exactly.
So that's kind of like kind of switch. I guess like you said, lifestyle back to school is kind of like for me. I'm like, hell yeah, let's go. It's good days.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't the case 20 some years ago or whatever. But now I'm like, yeah, screw summer. Let's get it something that's give us some more entertainment in life.
Yeah, for sure. We're looking forward to those Saturdays filled with football, and I'm going to start off the beverage talk here today just because I don't have anything unique. I went right back to the well of my kind of second beer that I talked about last week, that old Yingling Flight. I guess maybe I'm in that tailgate parking lot mood, I guess, because this would be the perfect one to have at the tailgate. Plenty that you could pound plenty of and have a good day with. So that's what I'm drinking, and of course just because I still have some of them from my recent trip down there south of the border. How about you?
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything bad about a Yingling. That's obviously one of my go-tos as we've learned over the several weeks here this summer. But it wasn't just lip service. I wasn't BSing you. This is kind of how into football I am. I went and grabbed the Jack O, which is the pumpkin ale Sam Adams puts out. And I was like, it's like 78-degree, kind of cloudy, gray day today. I was like, man, it feels like it should be fall. We should be, I was even almost went the stout route, but I was like, yeah, it's still a little early for that. And stout and kind of like those, porter, that's more like my 8 a.m. When you got 11 a.m. kicking, you got to start tailgating a little early. That's, a breakfast beer.
Coffee,
That's kind of the time I'd hit that one. So I didn't go too crazy, but I did go with the pumpkin ale. I know I'm sure all that stuff's probably on the shelves already, or kind of going to be on there pretty soon. So I don't want to kick that off too early, but it did feel like fall today, so I went ahead and went with that feeling.
Yeah, and I'm already seeing too. I get one of the text groups I'm in with some guys. Like somebody had sent a picture the other day and was like, "Is it too early for this already?" And he had an Oktoberfest in his hand, and it's like, "Yep, they're already showing up on the shelves. It's ready that time of season, I guess." It doesn't really, to me, doesn't feel like it until at least it's September. But heck, if it's there and you want to get in the mood,
I mean, a couple of weeks you'll be there. So. Yeah. And even like this year's weird because there's not as many as it seemed like there'd been kind of week zero, that's what they're calling it,
Yeah.
became a little more popular the last few years. But this year, I mean, I know we got a couple, but it's not like it was the last few years. It seems like that was like the trendy thing to do was everyone wanted to be the first, play that first week, so to speak. So seems like that's maybe died off a little. So we're pushing it back a little bit to more towards Labor Day, which I'm good with that as well.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll, as we said, talk about college football a lot here on the show. We do have a few other topics, so we wanted to kind of touch on here as we get things rolling. Kind of newsworthy wise, things that have come out. First off, there was an interesting little story that was popped out here. We kind of touched on it, just alluded to it a week ago. Notre Dame is suspending their men's swimming program for a minimum of one academic year after an internal and external investigation revealed some widespread gambling issues that violated NCAA rules. And they said that it was kind of became a bad culture essentially between the guys. It was a lot of in gambling, so they were just betting against each other basically, and on how they're going to perform, and mostly that's what it sounds like was going on. But it was a lot of like kind of extreme stuff, and then this almost, I guess, kind of like borderline of hazing type of things, where they're getting after each other about things. So it doesn't sound great. Obviously, it's a little bit different than, what we've talked about before and the issues we ran into last season before the football season got started. But things like this are happening, it seems to be, on a more prevalent scale, and this is just another wrinkle, I guess, in that scenario.
First, I want to know who's the damn snitch. That's the first thing we need to get the mind around and figure out what we'll get to the bottom of that. But yeah, as you said, it's a little bit different. It's not the asking your cousin to place a bet and then pulling a hammy midway through the breaststroke or whatever. So we're not at that level, but it was more like kind of just like like you said, like how you started, like a fantasy football league or whatever within
Mm-hmm.
yourself. But I guess in this case, you can kind of understand how it's it's supposed to be a legit athletic competition, sanctioned by a governing body. So maybe that's in, and a lot of it's probably PR too. It just doesn't look that great, and whether they're whoever told or how it found out without everybody kind of coming clean and telling all the details. It's probably just easiest thing they could do to kind of clear it up, do a PR move, and then come back the year later. But it's kind of more of those, just another one pops up, another one. I feel like DJ Khaled over here. Just every time there's like a freaking another one. It's like, when, I mean, this, like we said, it's different, but still there seems to be a lot of skin. It's almost like, I don't know, to me, like I said before, it's just kind of annoying because it's all like, oh, yep, see, gambling's wrong. You shouldn't be doing it. Like, and in this case, I mean, I guess it falls under that umbrella. But to me, it was a little bit more of a stretch with this one. But still, I mean, nonetheless, still something that probably need to a little bit better kept under wraps, or pissed off the wrong person, I guess.
I will say, hats off to these guys for being ingenuitive enough to come up with this system. Uh,
Well,
they're
yeah,
like,
that's the thing. You talk about someone being like an actual, like, legit, like back in the day bookie. It's like
yeah,
that's a lot of
that's the work.
bookkeeping and
Yeah.
just yeah, like even just the odds and kind of figuring that. I mean, there's some math involved. Give them credit for that.
Yeah. Well, and like they said in the story, like there's not the capability for them to find this in a normal book. Nobody places wagers on swimming, so they're like, oh, we're going to create our own thing. And so the kind of what they essentially did, it sounded like for the most part, was set kind of like over unders. Like, here's your time that you're looking for. Is it going to be over or under that, kind of thing? So that's what they were doing between themselves. And I guess it got, to be some fairly high numbers, too. So that's where part of the problem was. I did find this interesting. I see in the SI article, it says the NCAA apparently does currently have some guidelines in, like, gambling areas. So these are wagers that would produce lesser sanctions than internal gambling, where it's, yeah, I don't know, since it's their own thing, it's a little bit different. But here's kind of like their outline, I guess. So it goes by like how much you're wagering. So like wagers of $200 or less, they have some sports wagering rules and prevention education, and then it goes to like loss of 10% of eligibility. Over $500, it goes to 20% of a season eligibility, and then 30% if it's over 800, and then beyond that, it can be like permanent ban if they want to. So I just thought that was kind of intriguing that the NCAA even had some kind of tiered structure for that. I never had heard that before. Not that anybody's following or looking along, anyways, because we know how that goes. But
Well,
everybody's
yeah, when
basically
and if
giving
they
them
don't,
FUs.
self-punish, when are those, when is that going to come down anyways? Whenever that investigation gets completed 10 years down the road or whatever. And Indiana does have in person and online legalized sports betting, so it's not, obviously it doesn't say that makes this okay, but it's not like it's something that they couldn't do on something else, or people that were maybe not part of the team that were kind of making bets on this. They could bet on baseball or hockey or whatever. So that's like the kind of thing that's like, I don't know, like, this seems weird. As I don't know if it's a morality thing, and if so, that's definitely not the NCAA's business. Of that they're not exactly on the highest level there, and maybe it's just more of a being, the affiliation Notre Dame has, or being kind of just a bad look, and they just want to clean it up ASAP. I'm
Yeah.
guessing that's more where it is.
Yeah, well, yeah. No, if there's any university that wants a public face, that's the
Mm-hmm.
one. Um, I got a kick out of this line though in the story. It said that the culture issues cited in the review stem from a group text chat among the men's team's members, and it said the contents of the chat did not meet Notre Dame's expectation that they treat one another with dignity and respect.
Well, I
Huh.
guess it says it all right there, huh?
It says it all. Oh boy, yeah, I'm sure any when you look at any group text chat in a college
Yeah, I
atmosphere,
say
it's
let's look at that the chancellor and the president's text messages and see what we find there, buddy.
oh man, that's funny stuff. So interesting story. I'm sure there'll be more like kind of that comes out about that, or you can probably dive a little bit further than we cared to get into it. But definitely a little interesting side story in the world of sports and college wagering. Another story that came out this week too. We always kind of like to touch on media stuff too, is because we've both been in that field. Couple of fairly known names in the ESPN world lost their jobs this week on the same day. Sam Ponder, who has been a kind of long time filling different roles, but lately has been the kind of like NFL lead desk person for the ESPN show for a long time, and then also Robert Griffin III, who had been a college football commentator for the most part. He'd started to do some other NFL things and other bits and pieces here and there as well, but that was kind of his main gig. They both were let go. This is nothing new as far as ESPN letting talent go, because we've seen a wash of that, especially within this last year, and it's been pretty obvious that the reasons are, they're trying to save money. Like people get a little bit popular, they want to get rid of them because they don't want to pay them as much, or if they've been around longer, get rid of them, get somebody else new that's going to take a lesser contract and do the same type of job. That's how the business unfortunately works sometimes, but. Certainly is a little bit more eye-catching when it's names that you know and you've seen for a while, and those are two that certainly fit that mold. But it's just kind of at the end of the day, it's just kind of the latest in the round of this is what we keep seeing. Who knows if they land somewhere else? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's mostly just like you kind of laid out there. Just always comes down to a contract issue, a money issue, something like that. Because in these cases, at least, nothing that's come out, publicly is, fireable offenses that we know of. I mean, I know people were giving Griffin some crap there about that croissant picture, but I don't think that did it.
Yeah,
Especially as wacky and outlandish as he's tended to be, I don't think that would have been like the final straw, because it wasn't anything like, nothing criminal, nothing
yeah.
illegal, just goofy as he is. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, the timing seemed kind of weird. Of course, there's maybe some negotiations going on behind the scenes and just didn't come to agreement, and they just figured, yeah, we're done with you. But I would think that both will pop up somewhere with just all the apps, the services out there, this, even just online stuff. A lot of people have been going into kind of just doing their own thing through a Substack, or
Mm-hmm.
even through just the YouTube channel or whatever. And when you get to that ESPN level, of as long as you have a decent manager and agent type of thing, they can monetize it for yourself, and you ain't got to work for anybody. You don't have to worry about maybe getting fired or not saying what you think you should be able to say, and that type of thing. So
Yeah.
that might be the route that end up going. And I mean, this is like kind of one of those pie in the sky things, but I've seen a lot of talk just from some of the people that I guess cover media, or just that are like kind of in the journalism kind of business world, saying that their prediction is within a decade or so, most on air talent, whether it be I guess just on air or media. You don't have to be on air, just whatever is going to be like a freelance basis, anyways.
Mm,
They're not going to be an employer, more of a contractor system,
yeah.
which I could kind of see it. But then when it comes to benefits and all that, there's going to have to be a lot more unionization, I think, across the board. Because I know me myself, just being in the business, like with the pay that a lot of those jobs pay, you better have some
Mm,
damn good insurance and benefits to go along with that to make it worth that while. So that's the thing that I don't know. You have to be asking for a lot bigger dollar amount on top
yeah.
of that, or bringing in some additional revenue. So that to me that seems a little bit of a stretch, but I wouldn't see that. Some people might be doing that, especially when you have a big of a following, as some of the people do.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that too, and I guess in my opinion, would have to do with what amount of legwork is going to be done on each end. Because if you're starting to do your own thing, yeah, that's great. Like you said, you don't work for anybody anymore. But now there's
But
a
nobody
lot more.
works for you either.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot more you have to do now too. Yeah,
yeah.
you got to do the whole shooting match, get the equipment,
Yeah,
figure it
ads,
out.
whatever you
All
want
of
to
yeah,
sell. Yep,
yeah,
promotion. Yeah,
yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, we'll see how that does transition down the line. I think you're kind of right. It will morph a little bit, especially as these, media entities have so much uncertainty that swings from time to time. Like on a contractor system for them almost makes more sense in some regards because then you can fluctuate with your cash flow as well. But yeah, interesting. I think I guess I always have thought that and I don't care to watch those NFL preview shows all that much, anyways. But I always thought Sam Ponder was good at what she does. I guess I respected her back when she started as like a sideline college football reporter. She did a pretty good job, rose through the ranks pretty quickly, and I think that was because she was pretty good at it. So I always respected like what she did as far as how she handled herself. I know she got in some mix up with few people like back and forth, on what can and can't be said about each other kind of things, but everybody gets into that once in a while. But then, but then RG3, yeah, I mean, a unique guy. Like like you said, he certainly like is goofy. Like he always wanted to get in the middle of like anything kind of, I don't know, kind of clicky or
Yeah, whatever the hot topic was, he was
yeah.
right in there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I didn't personally think he was very good at the analyst part of the job. He got better. I will say he got better, but he still wasn't great. I mean, that wasn't, obviously there was a lot of polish that needed to be put there because he wasn't used to it. You could tell. But I think the thing that frustrated folks the most sometimes too is because he would get so caught up in those little like tradition type things that they try to plug at the beginning of games and stuff. It would look so homerish because it was so one sided. Like is this the intro for the game or is this like a promo for the school? Like what are we doing here? So I can see where people would get upset with that, how he presented himself in that regard at times.
Yeah, and then me kind of just talking about Ponder and just kind of thought I had while you were talking is the unfortunate situation is obviously not a fair thing either, but where male counterparts have the advantage of whether you want to believe it or not, age and looks is like held against women unlike it's held against men. Unfortunately, you can
Mm-hmm.
be Brent Musburger and be on TV for 50 years looking like that. But maybe like one wrinkle by the side of your eye or your hair, a gray hair, and so, some of the women are looking for a new job, or a new network or whatever. So I mean, that's not something I'm like that's the unfortunate part of the business. That's something that probably needs to be addressed. Obviously, it's talked more about just because when somebody says that and it's like, well, then there comes all these excuses. But I do think that that is definitely not fair to women in the industry, that they're definitely held to a different standard as far as, and at the same time then you don't want to say that it doesn't matter, but then you're holding it against them. So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, we've seen that. I mean, before. So, yeah, it's definitely interesting when different names come up, and it kind of makes you wonder and think a little bit about what were the reasons and why is this happening. But yeah, like I said, at the end of the day, I don't know that it's more so about the people themselves rather than just ESPN trying to save a few dollars, which is unfortunate too, because it sucks to be in a business where you feel like you can't be secure in what you do, even if you feel like you're doing an okay job. So.
Well,
Well,
we've mentioned it before too. It's who they decide to pay is always going to be a head scratcher, and that's not even just ESPN. That's kind of
mhm.
across the board with media. It's like, and it will never make sense. And I guess that's just kind of have to, not saying you accept it, but you just got to kind of realize that's part of the equation too.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes, unfortunately, as we've seen, the people that are just more controversial are the ones that end up getting ahead, which is unfortunate because they're not the ones that are good at it sometimes either. So, uh, yeah, we'll keep our eye on that part of the industry as always, of course, and talking more about some things like that do come up. SJ, I know this. You've been paying attention to the fight game here recently, and we've had some stuff going on, and you want to do a little bit of a recap on some of that.
Yeah, it was UFC 305 last night from Perth, Australia, or Western Australia as they call it. They kept saying that, and I know that's kind of like become a thing when they've had several shows there. And I guess I just maybe it's just like from the distance wise, it's a separator. But I don't know. I was like, Australia is still Australia, right? I don't know. Did I miss something in geography class? But either way, that's kind of goes without saying. Yeah, a little bit of a tough night, but honestly, kind of didn't feel terrible because it was a bit of an underdog kind of coming out on top night. Started out pretty good in the women's division there. Casey O'Neill took the win on. I did a underdog bet there. She was just straight up lost the next three I took here on my first one was a little bit of a kind of a little bit controversial too. It was basically just a long story short. Tafa I took to, and he like yelled like, of course, I mean, of course it would hurt. Like I don't blame him for yelling, but like in the fighting combat world, jiu-jitsu, whether it be that or MMA, it's when you do that, it's kind of like a automatic tap. It's not always like held to like concrete, but in this case, the judge, and you could audibly hear it. It was, I mean, it was pretty damn near blood curdling. So I could kind of see why the ref was like, yeah, maybe we should. This dude's about to get his knee ripped off, so we better stop here. But there was a little bit of a, of course, he protested, and it wasn't like crazy, but he ended up kind of like going up to the guy in there, chucked after. He gave him a little slap there, a little love tap that wasn't wasn't anything friendly. That goes, there might be a little bit of a, I don't know if necessarily a rematch, but there'll definitely be maybe some bad blood there. Here's the last didn't play out on my side was Dan Hooker kind of pulled one out of his arse there, but he looked real. He ended up getting the win, so that was the last one. I did get in the co-main event. Got Kai Kara France. He won. He actually got a knockout in the first round. I should have put a little more cheese on that boy, but it's kind of like how, like just I said, like you go by when you go by like, oh, this is the trend here. This is what's gonna happen. That should never happen. So I was like, I gotta play it safe because I did kind of see him come back, but he is coming off a loss or two. So, and then in the main event, I did go with the underdog at Asanya. He is actually looking fairly decent there through about 3 rounds, but I don't know, just almost to me like he just gassed, didn't have anything left, and kind of fell down and got choked out. So that was the end of that. So not a great night, but a couple decent ones pulled me out and put a little bit more. I guess the ones that I was a little more heavy on ended up kind of even in the night out. But as far as 2 out of 6, that's nothing I'm gonna write home about. We'll get to studying here a little bit more and do better next time.
All right, yeah, it's you have some good nights and you have some bad nights, and
well, I mean, when you play the trends or what's when you look into it and say this is the most likely scenario, I'm always just like that. That's the best I can do, so that's what we're gonna go with. And when I take an underdog or two, I kind of frame it in my mind as that this is an underdog. If I win, this is gonna be awesome. But if not, I can't be like, can't believe that happened. Like, what the hell, like, bro, like he's a freaking underdog. Pretty much all of these are almost plus money except for the 2 that I mentioned that I won. So it's not that surprising, but I just went the wrong side of the underdog. So that's the way it goes.
Yep. All right, so that's a little bit of a recap there, and of course, as always, if you're looking for those picks through the week, and if we, maybe don't touch on it on the program, or whatever the case may be, make sure you're following on socials because SJ does a great job of putting that stuff out there for you to see. So at SJM Bets is his handle there on Twitter. Mine is at Cherokee CP. So we'll try to get those graphics up to you whenever we're kind of feeling something. When we look at something, we want to roll with it. Whether it be fights, whether it be some NFL preseason action you've been rolling with lately, or, we got into the Olympics a little bit, whatever it is. So keep following there and we'll throw that out there. And as always.
Maybe Notre Dame swimming.
Notre Dame swimming, yeah. I got a hold of the right guy. I know a guy. So, yeah, we'll keep doing that and throw that stuff out there for you. Had to crack a fresh one there, so sorry about that.
I ain't mad at you.
Yeah, so yeah, keep following us there, and we'll get you those picks out there. And of course, as we get into football season too, just kind of a heads up for folks that maybe haven't followed the program that long, we will be putting out some videos as well too through our YouTube channel. So be on the lookout for that. Obviously, we kind of focus on some picks or things we like in college football season, the NFL, that type of stuff. So we'll be throwing that out there for you to take a peek at. All right, let's get into some college football talk here. We've been anxious to get to more of this. We've talked a little bit about it. We did some futures, kind of win total stuff for you, both college and pros, and now we're going to get into kind of what we're looking at as far as winners in the major conferences. Of course, it used to be the Power Five. I guess if you're Oregon State and Washington State, you still think that's the case, but now the Power Four of actual conferences that have more than a couple teams in them. So we're going to pick a winner, and then we'll kind of look at a dark horse in each conference as well. So it should be kind of fun, and maybe we'll even mention teams that we're still kind of thinking will be in the mix, more than one. Because I know I had a couple where I wrote down, oh yeah, this team looks interesting too. So just to keep in mind.
I mean, so far out, it's really hard to narrow it down to one. So two or three is not. Obviously, we want to give people the few options there, especially when you're going for those long range future bets. And hey, that pack two, I'm never after that cocktail hour and that show they on there. They're okay in my book.
Yeah, they're good with us. We like those folks. I do have it pulled up here too, so I might throw numbers out there, at least just generalized numbers of what I see here for like the odds on to win the conferences too. And we're talking about these teams, but in case you do want to put some coin down on what we're talking about, let's start. I kind of wrote this out. I was thinking, okay, what do I want to look at first here? And typically what you see from all the major networks, and all the, of course, the football gurus, I kept watching these little things or seeing little, recaps and whatever, and it was always like, oh, save the best for last. And then, of course, they're talking about the freaking SEC. So we're going to go the opposite route. I'm going to start with the SEC since we can just get them out of the way because that's not really our...
get the a-holes in and out the door is the way I'd look at it, yeah.
It's not our wheelhouse. F them. Granted, they play a lot of good football. There's a lot of good teams, and it is going to be a wild conference for sure. But... we're just going to go there first. So, SJ, I guess I'll go ahead and throw out my winner here, and this is nothing that's going to be shocking for anyone, and it may be the common pick by most. After looking at it, I do think there are multiple teams that can win this conference and may very well do so, but I still think that, it's kind of that get back in the driver's seat type of mentality for a really good team. And I think that's what's going to be the case here for Georgia. As long as they keep letting their players, drive 110 miles an hour down the main street and kill whoever they want, that it doesn't matter. They'll keep winning football games as well. And unfortunately, they keep bringing in really good players. They're filling in spots where they needed it. Obviously, Carson Beck is one of a lot of people consider strongest returning quarterbacks. He was very strong throughout most of last season. They've got a really good line that's mostly back. And then they bring in a transfer running back that's pretty solid in Travis Etienne. So I just think they've got a lot of the check marks. And then I think their schedule shapes up pretty well for them as well. They do have 3 really tough road games, Alabama, Texas, and then also against Ole Miss. But I do think a couple of those teams are ones that they can handle and manage, even if it is on the road. So I like them. They're going to be a fun team again to watch. I do think they'll get a test from a couple of others, but I guess that's where I'm going with my winner. It may not be too exciting, but that's what I got. How about you?
Yeah, that seems like obviously the safe bet, the smart bet. Even I would go as far as to say that when doing the futures, of course. I mean, even with Georgia, you're still getting plus money, so it's nothing's really a bad bet in my mind. It's obviously harder to zero in on and to hit it because, of course, there's easy. That's the only bet you need to make all season, right?
Yeah.
So, but maybe just to go a little bit more maximize. And honestly, in my mind, I'm kind of thinking, there may be a little bit of a power shift going on here in a lot of the conferences, not just the SEC, but when you consider that so many, you're not playing every team anymore, even if most of them weren't already, but now you're definitely not. And just a lot of, whether it's, going to affect you to the good or the bad, it's still new styles, new teams. It's not the same, I know everyone wants to talk about the travel. To me, that's not a big a deal, but it's just different opponents. You do get a little bit of routine and kind of, oh, I know when I'm going to play. Let's say we'll just stay in the SEC. I'm going to play Ole Miss, or I'm going to play Kentucky or Vanderbilt. You kind of the lay of the land there and everything with that. And it's going to be a little bit different. So I mean, I think that factors in as well. So I think just with two new teams, especially the Texas and Oklahoma, the likes of them, that's going to whether tough their schedules are or not, it's still going to be a new challenge for whoever does play them. So I mean that kind of factors into just the whole, not just Georgia in general. But I think maybe Alabama's got a shot here, considering that newness, going on that new angle, and with plus 750 odds, considering their recent success. Obviously, I mean they were unbeatable 3 years ago. No, they're never going to lose a game again, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, we know that's not the way it goes because you're unbeatable until you get beat, and then everybody gets beat. So, but I do think they maybe have a shot here, just looking at winning that conference. Obviously, we're not forecasting to the playoff or anything, but I think it's a decent bet with them at that plus 750. And even another one that kind of said maybe this is more of a dark horse, but just someone that I think kind of laying in the weeds there might be like an LSU. Plus 1,000 is what I saw them at. They're just inside the top 15 here in the preseason. I think they're 13th or so. I believe that's what I saw them at. Coming off a 10-win season and winning four straight to end the year. I understand, Daniels is gone. It's a whole different ball of wax there, but just with that number there, get hot. Who knows what happens? And they're going to have athletes, and they're going to have going to be able to put up some numbers, and probably have a friggin' hard ass defense on top of that all.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I think that's a good pick, and I agree with you too on Bama. I mean, when you get that kind of money on a team like Alabama, that's certainly not a bad wager at all. And you got a returning quarterback that's experienced and good. Obviously, they knocked off Georgia the last couple of times they've had a chance, so not out of the realm of possibilities at all. So that is a good pick. I didn't mention
Well, this
my
isn't a rooting for thing either, because I mean I don't like any of
yeah
these damn teams, so don't get that twisted. But this is who we think could win. Just I'd get that
yeah
cleared up. But go ahead. Sorry to interrupt, but I
no
had to
yeah.
put that out there. I'm not rooting for any of these teams.
Yeah, no, unless it's like friggin' Vanderbilt or something, I'm probably not on board. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, I'll give them. Yeah, I'll give them. I'll throw them a bone. Yeah.
my dark horse is again one that I never thought would be any good in this league, and somehow they're finding a way to do it. Mizzou, they're a team not just because I think I do think there are some question marks there, and I think they have some things to prove, but you go 11-2 last year. They beat Ohio State in the bowl game. Looked fairly good doing that. Obviously, they had a really good ground game. That was part of it. But also, I think it sets up for them just the way that the schedule plays, too. They've got road trips to Bama and A&M, and then they're home against Auburn and Oklahoma. But outside of that, the schedule isn't all that tough. They don't play Texas. They don't play LSU. They don't play Georgia. So that gives them a pretty good opportunity. They've got the good quarterback back in Brady Cook, one of a lot of folks think maybe is the best wide receiver in the country, in Luther Burden. They're a good team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm going to give them a crack at doing some damage and maybe even getting into that conference
Well, we're
championship
talking
scenario.
conference winners too. With the way how many teams are on the big ones, at least. I mean, it could be a three loss team wins your conference.
Yeah, yeah, and it might be common. Yeah, nowadays. So that's interesting. Kentucky's another team that's interesting too to look at. I don't know as far as winning the whole damn thing, but they do return a lot. They got like 21 of their starters back, and they've got some pretty good players, at the skill positions. So, and they brought in quite a few transfers. So, I think that's another team to pay attention to in that conference. It's nobody's going to be kind of thinking about, so to speak. So that's kind of how I see the SEC shaping up. That gives you some ideas of what we're thinking there. Obviously, like we said before, that conference, there's so many teams that could have a possibility of getting in the mix. You talk about, we didn't even touch on Tennessee or even Ole Miss. Was still a good team and should be better. A&M obviously has their pie in the sky idea of what they'll be someday, but never have become. So it's and it's an interesting conference, that's for sure. And I will be interested, even though I'm not mad about them leaving. I do want to see how it's going to go for Texas and Oklahoma. Obviously, that's going to be a lot of the talk and the fodder, and how things change for them now that they, join a new league, and will it be different? We already kind of alluded to before. We thought that win total number was pretty low for Oklahoma. I think they can do some damage there. Texas, on the other hand, they're ones that kind of, usually crumble when the pressure comes. So can they change that narrative when they start playing
Well,
some
and
of
they
these
need to
teams?
stay healthy too. Like seems like every other, couple days you see, a starter or someone's going to be a contributor for them going down. So that's probably might be their main focus here. And I kind of just going back to what I said before. It's just kind of without knowing seeing it, at least a season or two play out. It's kind of hard to know how these, what do you want to call them, super conferences are going to kind of how it's going to go. But I mean, we'll figure it out here in a year or two. It just right now it's a little bit of the unknown. I think that's kind of maybe saying like I could see this, I could see that. There's a lot of scenarios you could
Yeah.
see playing out in your mind.
Yeah. Well, and it's a double edged sword because we do get this kind of crappy conference scenario, I think, now with not being able to play as many
Yeah,
teams.
yeah,
But on the other hand, you do get into the expanded playoff. So there's kind of that give and take. So now, even though you may not have the greatest schedule or play the best teams all the time, you still may have a chance to, get your name in the mix there.
yeah. I don't. I'll never like not being able to play everybody in your conference, but I mean, it's nice to see some of these pretty big name matchups is cool too. So you gotta, I guess, kind of that maybe helps lighten that that sour taste a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe kind of makes up for some of that crap we used to get in the early season games where nobody wanted to watch any of those early matchups. It was getting better. I will say, the last few years it's been getting better. Some teams have been a little bit more brave again, but yeah, that's kind of always a struggle. I'm gonna flip over now. I'm gonna stay, I guess, on that side of the con or that side of the country, and go to the ACC. Um, Interesting storylines outside of football going on there, obviously, with a couple of programs that aren't real happy to be there anymore, and may or may not be on the way out here, not too far down the line. But at the end of the day, they're still playing, and they've got to decide who's the best football team here this upcoming season. And I went a little bit back and forth on this. I think there's a couple of teams that could definitely, or a few teams that could get in the mix and win this thing. But coming off of the type of season that they had, even though there's a lot of change, I still am going to give a slight edge to the old Seminoles out of Florida State. They bring in a transfer quarterback once again. This time, DJ Uyunglele will be there. Of course, he's made the rounds. He was at Clemson and went across the country over to Oregon, and then now Oregon State, and then back now here to Florida State. So he's made the moves, but he did play a lot better last year, and he's kind of shown some upside and some growth. So I think that helps them. They bring in a pretty good defensive end as well, transfer from Georgia. Obviously, a terrific season for them last year, 13-1. Didn't end the way they wanted it to, of course, when they got that marquee matchup. But still a good team, and I think good enough to probably win that conference just because they got enough players across the board. And there's too much, I think, uncertainty. A lot of other teams to feel real confident that they're going to be the ones that come up and win it. So that's why I went there.
Yeah, I didn't feel too much of a easy pick here because I mean I was got him at just under plus 300, so I still think that's enough of a long shot where it's not so obvious. Unlike Georgia, I thought that was just a little too close to even money to make that be a smart be a bet that get return on. But I'm with you on Florida State. But I guess the question will be is was last year kind of just a a blip on the radar, or are they been kind of rebuilt? So that will be. I mean, they're coming in top 10 teams, so I mean that's obviously off last year, but you're still you're right there where you need to be to at least make a run if things go right and play that way. Team that I'll probably talk about as a dark horse here in the conference is NC State, but Florida State doesn't play them, so
There you
kind
go.
of go on Florida State, and they get Clemson at home. So I think those are going to be two advantageous, kind of things for Florida State, where that lean me more towards picking them instead of an NC State, which I mean, coming off a decent 9-win season and 6-2 in the conference, where they beat Clemson, Miami, Vatech, and North Carolina last year. So that says a lot right there. So I think that's kind of a more of a long shot bet that I wouldn't mind messing with there at plus 650 for NC State. I know they were pretty good to you last year. I think 3 or 4 weeks in a row almost they came through big for on your play. So
Mm-hmm.
I think you probably like that pick as well. But that one, and then I did see just the last one mention of ACC that I had. I saw Clemson was getting like plus 350. I honestly think they're done. I think they're a
Mhm.
little bit run's got to come to an end. I don't think that they don't have talent. I just think the head man there has got a little bit over his skis, and
Mhm.
he's kind of focused on the wrong things these days, rather than what they were doing before, and maybe the NIL was something that hurt them more than helped them. It seems like.
Yeah, they're definitely one of those programs that has not bought into that game as much as everyone else, as he's been vocal about. So that definitely is something that's a hindrance there. Yeah, still a team that probably can compete and be in the mix, but yeah, I think you're kind of right where you're alluding to there. I'm with you. My dark horse, I had the same team written down. I went through a couple. Miami's been the popular talking point too. A lot of people think they're going to
You
have
can't
that
do it
bounce
until they
back
do it,
season.
man. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a Texas thing for me. It's like, I mean, not saying it can't happen, but you get that's like a see and believe type thing, I think.
hmm Well, and just there's so much into that too. Like even with just the decision making, we saw the non knee game last year. Like it's hard to get over that kind of stuff. Like you
Mhm.
got to be good on all fronts, and it just isn't working there yet. So yeah, I'm with you. But NC State, I mean, they bring in some really interesting transfers. I mean, Grayson McCall coming in from Coastal at quarterback, who we know is very good. Jordan Waters, the running back from Duke, is coming over. Obviously they've been a pretty good offensive team the last number of years, and then they've got a wide receiver in Noah Rogers that's coming in as well, and I think they also have a tight end recruit. So they're filling all those kind of specialized positions, and to what was already a pretty decent team. They went on a good run there at the end of last season. I think their coach is pretty good as well. Gets kind of the maxed out of what he can there in that program. And a good schedule, like you said. So I think it shapes up really well for NC State. They very well could win the conference, I think, and be an actual kind of one of those legitimate dark horses where you make the bet and it does pay off for you. So I like that. We'll move over now here, and I'm going to go to the Big 12. Obviously, a very different conference now than it has been here in recent times. You've got two teams that are officially gone, four more now that are joining the mix to the few that already had joined the last year, the four that joined that were new. So it's a lot of newness, a lot of new matchups, a lot of unknowns, and as we've already kind of talked about, I think it's going to be one hell of a fun football season to watch if you're a Big 12 fan or if you're just somebody that likes to watch good college football, because I think you're going to get a lot of close games week in and week out, and probably gets a few surprises week in and week out on who you think is going to win each game. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be one of those where it kind of sucks as a gambler, because you're going to see somebody play real well and think, oh, I like what they're doing right now. And then the next week they go out and do the exact opposite of what you're expecting, and it's going to piss you off. But I think it's going to be that kind of a season. But I do find it hard to go against this team, even though they're a newbie to the fold. They've been so close to being really good overall on a national scale. They just kind of never won that one big game that they needed to get them over the hump. And they're bringing back a really good player that had to sit out last season at quarterback in Cam Rising. I think Utah is kind of the team to beat, just on paper. They always play tough. It's a really tough place to go play, and obviously for teams that haven't been there before, that makes it even a little bit more difficult. So I give them the edge. I'm not saying that I don't think there's probably 6 teams that can win this league, but if you had to make me pick one right now, that's who I'm going to go with, because I think it's the most logical one to start.
I mean, every conference that we've talked about has new teams coming in, but this one seemed the hardest for me to like kind of narrow down or really zero in on, just because of it's almost like, when you talk the week to week betting, it's almost basically the total is all I look at in the Big 12, and I'm hitting the overs if it's like 48 or less. I mean, that's kind of the only thing I've come to that's going to be you can count on. It's just, I mean, it's not saying it's good or bad. It just seems like the sixth best team can beat the second best team on any given week. So that's kind of just the way the conference plays out. So that made this even more difficult. Like I like the Utah pick. But I kind of got to stick to my guns here, being like the new conference. I can't just go all in on it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I was maybe looking a different direction, right? Because I mean, they are. I understand, the quarterback's coming back. Didn't have him last year, but they were only an 8-win outfit last year. So that's a little bit on the low end probably if you're looking for a conference champion. But you look at the team that maybe has the next best odds or someone close, that's Oklahoma State. And
Hmm.
to me, they're of the same ilk of like a Miami or a Texas. Maybe not necessarily the history wise, but just as far as when they are expected to do big things, they seem to come up short, or
Hmm.
something happens that it doesn't end up working out the way it looks like it's going to work out. So that's why I was like, I gotta stick with Utah, because the next best team that I was looking at is UCF at plus 900, and they won six. They had a losing record last year, 6-7. I get things can turn around and change, but I'm like, man, so I might throw a couple beans on that, because plus 900 is like the third best odds. Somebody is something out there. Maybe they're expecting a big turnaround. I don't think so. So I mean, I'm just kind of wrap this up here. I'm thinking Utah's the pick as well with you, but keep an eye on that UCF too. I think that's maybe worth a shot. And I don't trust Oklahoma State even at that good of a return. Just they haven't done it yet. I can't remember them ever coming through when they're expected to.
Yeah, I would say that I would feel confident putting a little, or not confident, but I guess I would feel good about putting just a little bit of a sprinkle on Okie State, because
Oh
I
yeah,
think they're.
definitely.
I
Yeah.
mean, when you're getting, because right now I'm seeing plus 750. I
Yep.
mean, hell
That's what.
yeah,
Yep.
I would give a little bit of that because I think they have the best player. Um, I think people are really undervaluing how good Ollie Gordon is. If you haven't watched him play, then
Well,
maybe you don't understand. But the
maybe
kid's
they're
really
not
good.
expecting to be on the field all season
Well,
either.
that
That
could
might
be
be
too.
part of that. So that would be the only thing. But yeah, as far as talent wise, yeah, he'd be hard pressed to find somebody as good as him
Yeah.
at that position across the whole country. But
Hmm.
uh, it might be something else. And like we talked about, Sweeney kind of being off the rails. Gundy invented off the rails, so
Hmm.
we know there's going to be some off field something this year,
Yeah.
because it seems to happen at least once or twice a year with him.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure. They do have a lot coming back. 20 returning starters, so that
Mm.
is definitely a team there's a reason people think that they could be in the mix. The one that kind of gets me scratching my head a little bit is everybody's in love with K State as a possible
Mm.
winner, and I don't know. I just don't see it. They're going to be a good team, but I don't think they're going to be a championship caliber team. I mean, you've got a new quarterback in there. A lot. I know people love him and think he's got some great potential, and I don't disagree with that. But that's a lot to expect from a young guy, and a lot of unknowns there. You lose your former starting quarterback, leaves the program, and I think part of that was just because he saw the writing on the wall that they're going to give this other guy a chance. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not bought into that. The ones that I do see is a little bit more of a dark horse if you want to put a little just wager out there. One team that I would think might have a chance to do some damage just because they are so good offensively, even though they lost their head coach, is Arizona coming into the league. They bring back Fafita and then McMillan at the wide receiver spot. They hooked up for 1,400 yards and 10 TDs last year. Their offense, I think, will be really good again. Yeah, yet to be seen how it's going to flow with a new coach coming in there, but I think that they have potential to make things interesting. And of course, the homer in me wants to believe that my Iowa State Cyclones are going to be a little bit in the mix too, just because they kind of got themselves in the run mix there at the end of last season when nobody expected them to, and now you've got a season coming in where the quarterback's ready. He's there. Beckton knows he's going to be the starter. They bring back also 20 returning starters, so it should be a team that really can compete week in and week out. And I wouldn't be hesitant to put a little bit of a sprinkle there as well. I'm seeing plus 900 right now on the Cyclones, plus 1,200 on Arizona. So definitely worth a little bit of cheese there, I would think. It's going to be a wild one. I would not be surprised. There's a lot of teams that could win that league. So very unpredictable. Even West Virginia, a team I didn't mention, I think they're going to be good. So there's a lot there down the road, and then of course there's a lot of hype teams too. I think that are just going to get ignored and go away. So that's part
Yeah,
of
I
it
don't think
too.
we have many EMAs listing out there, but I think I said Oklahoma State the second best. I'm at third best odds, second best team on my list, but just
Yeah,
I don't want to
yeah,
disrespect those clowns out there just in case. But and
yeah,
also I want to be accurate.
yeah, yeah.
That was one I overlooked quickly. Kind of on the same vein as you. I don't see that
Mm,
coming together. At least not this year. Maybe next year
yeah.
once he's had a season under his belt. I don't see that happen. That's a tall task to ask somebody coming in, especially with all the changes, new teams, and even just being a D1 quarterback full time for the first time is that's a lot to do in your first season behind under center.
Yeah. So that's where we're sitting at there with the Big 12. Like I said, fun conference to watch. This next one also is going to be a fun conference to watch because, again, it's very new. There is some teams flying in to the league. Literally, they'll be flying across the country to play football. And the Big Ten. A lot of new matchups. And, of course, now the schedule gets goofy, too. It already was a little bit different. I know that they had previously talked about expanding even the conference games before all this came about. And now you've got more teams even involved now, so it gets even goofier on who plays who. So that changes some things on who you think is going to be out there. SJ, who do you feeling has got the lead here coming out of the gate?
Yeah, I don't feel as apprehensive about picking the favorite here on this one, and it's got. I mean, I think it's got to be Ohio State with the changing of the guard at Michigan. Of course, Michigan's still going to have the talent, but it's a whole different ball of wax when you're leading the show for from start to finish rather than stepping into the box for a couple games or what happened last year. So at plus 700, they're still worth maybe a sprinkle, as we were saying, for Michigan, but I think they're going to take a sizable step back this year. Maybe a 9 or 10 win season, which isn't bad. It's just not what they've probably become accustomed to there. So there might be a little bit of a hot seat after this
Mm-hmm.
season for there. But I think Ohio State, you just kind of got to go with it. Just too much talent. The kind of if they didn't have a chip on their shoulder before, it's got to be there, especially now after the way Michigan's handled them the last couple of seasons. So I think they're going to be probably running up some big numbers this year and kind of proving a point. So I think it's too hard not to pick them. Um, you know, again, I don't like the newness is something I just can't get behind because it'd be going against everything I've said before. But if you're an Oregon fan or if you're someone that does think that new style is going to cause problems, they're a plus 200 on the book I checked, and 12-win team last year. Only team that beat them was Washington. So of course, a playoff team. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's a way to go too. But I can't go outside of Ohio State to win, and I think that's as far as futures go, that would be the one I'd be most confident in. And probably put it's not going to be a huge amount, but that'd be the biggest amount I'd play.
Yeah, I'm with you on Ohio State. I just don't. I mean, yeah, the Oregon would be the one that you would think maybe is gonna give them a test. And like you said, that is interesting just from a standpoint of style. Like certainly that has been a long argued thing. The Pac-12 style and what they do at Oregon specifically with the whole like focus on speed type of thing, comparing it to what is typically a defensive conference in the Big Ten, will be interesting for sure. Even USC kind of a little bit into that mix, I think, just the way that they like to play. But yeah, I think it's a pretty prohibitive favorite here in my mind in Ohio State. I mean, I know Will Howard is a pretty good quarterback, and I don't think he has to do anything like super spectacular to make them really good because they've got other good players at skill positions. They bring in a really good running back in Judkins there from Ole Miss. So the rich get richer, so to speak, is what's happening there at Ohio State with talent. And like you said, the chip on the shoulder. I think they're going to realize that this is an opportunity for them to grasp the championship right back. So I'd feel really good about them winning.
Well,
Uh,
just one more thing on Oregon here. I mean, you look at their schedule too. I mean, this might sound, what take it for what you will, but they do have to travel to Michigan in November. Same go to Wisconsin in November,
mm,
and then this one might seem a little funny to somebody, but that freaking West Lafayette on a Friday night is kind of a bitch more than you think it would be. Not that Purdue's going to be that awesome. It's
mm,
just like one of those weird, like it's
yeah.
almost like going into the freaking Twilight Zone. Like it's just like
Mm-hmm.
a weird situation. I mean, Ohio State's gotten beat there on more than one occasion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of one of those things that it gets a little funky there on a Friday night for one reason or another.
Yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be interesting. The if you're gonna go with a real kind of bigger long shot, um, kind of dark horse, one that I picked out, and I think it's just gonna be interesting to see how they'll bounce back and how things change. But I think they got a really good coach coming in to replace one that they lost, and this was a team that made it to the championship game last year. Washington. I know that they lose almost everybody. Like it's pretty much a roster turnover. Like it's a whole new team, but they brought in a lot of transfers. Like I said, they've got a good coach. They bring in Will Rogers at quarterback there from Mississippi State, who's proven to be pretty decent at times. And I think once he's in a better system, will be even better. They're kind of a funny team. They'll be interesting. They're always playing. They're one of those teams in the Pac-12 where it's always like, they seem to play tough. Even if they're playing against somebody who you think would maybe give them a good pounding, their defense still seems to kind of hang in there more so than other Pac-12 teams. So they're a little bit of an interesting one. I could see them kind of having a couple surprises along the way.
Yeah, it's not a bad pick, especially when you're coming off the season they're coming off. Whether it's the same players or not, you still kind of have that momentum, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot. This the program overall. It's like, well, we kind of know how to win now, so how do we, continue that? And just, I know that's kind of how the main conference is, but we do a lot of action, right?
Mm-hmm.
A hell of a lot of action. So I had to give them some love. So, and this is probably another favorite. This ain't a crazy take, but I'm gonna go with Miami of Ohio plus 250. They've won the conference twice since 2019, so including last year, went 11-3 and won the conference. So that's about as safe a bet as you're gonna get, and still get a pretty good plus number there. So I'll go ahead and we'll throw the action a little love, just because, man, some of those weeks you need a Tuesday night game or a Wednesday night game, because the Saturday slate's not so great.
Agreed. And we love the action. I mean, it gets us over the hump. It's always fun football. Like the games
Oh,
are pretty good. Like it's really
I will
interesting.
say though, it's a damn hard one to pinpoint though. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it's almost, we talked about the Big 12. It's kind of like to that, where it's like, I mean, the Toledos and the Bowling Greens of the world. It's you never know what's gonna happen there. So that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, that'll be. I'm sure that's going to be a wild mix again. I think there's a lot of teams that are probably right in there, but I think you're probably on the right pace there with that one. I know Toledo should be pretty good again too. They kind of lost a little traction last year when they thought they were going to be better, but I think they'll probably be back in that mix again. But yeah, it'll be fun to watch that conference, and of course we'll have some fun with those picks during the week. That's no doubt about that. All right, that's kind of our rundown there of what we got going on here in the different major conferences as far as winners and dark horses are concerned. Obviously, we're only a week away from actually picking games, so we'll get right into that. We do have a couple, as SJ alluded to earlier, coming up here this weekend. There's nothing that's too awfully overwhelmingly exciting here this first week zero. Florida State, Georgia Tech will be one, obviously, to keep an ade on for that first game. It's an 11 a.m. kickoff on Saturday on ESPN, so we'll watch that one. And it looks like, what we got? We got a couple of other. There's not too much else.
Well,
That's too
that's
exciting.
the Ireland game, is it not, or am I mistaken?
Yeah, you're right. That is in
Yeah,
Dublin.
so they'll
Yeah.
be over in
Yep.
Dublin.
Yes, Dublin. Yeah. Top of the morn. Uh,
I pop a couple Guinness for them. We'll just do it just to be there
exactly.
in spirit. Yeah.
Yeah. SMU Nevada, that's not a terrible matchup. That's another one that goes on that night on CBS Sports Network. So something to get the juices flowing here a little bit. And it's not bad just to have a couple games, get the taste, I guess, get you flowing back in the swing of things here once
Yeah,
again.
got to work out get the brain going again. Give
Yeah.
you a week or so to get the mind right, and then get going for real.
Yeah, I'm seeing FSU as an 11.5 point favorite right now, over under at 55.5. So we'll keep our eye on that. And like I said, we'll probably maybe
I
do a
mean,
little teaser later in the week or
yeah, that
something.
Georgia Tech style is always kind of funky, so we might have to get in the numbers a little bit and come up with at least one pick for next week. I'm sure we'll probably throw another one in there. We'll
Yeah,
find something here. That Delaware State Hawaii line might be pretty. That might be pretty high, that total. So I will have to look at that one.
that's true. Yeah, the Warriors putting up some numbers. One thing I do before we wrap up, and this is again kind of interesting, I think, because we've started to see some changes around our parts here as far as the books are concerned.
Mhm.
The fine Warhorse Casino over in Omaha had its official opening here
Nice.
just about a week and a half ago. So they've got the new look. I haven't been over there yet to check it out, but it does look like they did a pretty damn good job on setting it all up. And of course, they've still got the track view there for what was formerly Horseman's Park. And they'll still have the races there, at intervals at that place. So that's cool. And I know you got some new digs down the road from you as well to go settle into.
Yeah, and kind of following up to that, the Hollywood Casino, which is the closest sports book to where I'm located, over it's on the Kansas side of Kansas City, Kansas. I'm located in Kansas City, Missouri. There's a difference, but yeah, so that's the closest book. But the ESPN bet kind of took over the reins there, which it was much needed. So I'm glad to see that. It was a little bit of a dog and pony show there before. Nothing against the other books, just it wasn't done right. Now it looks like they're doing it right. So we'll be look forward to getting out there. But kind of the follow up with that, sounds like the legalized sports betting maybe is going to be on the ballot in the state of Missouri in
Mm-hmm.
November. So I'll do my damn shares in my part to get people get out there and just vote yes, no big deal. If you don't want to gamble, you don't have to. It's not going to make you do it, but
Mm-hmm.
it'd be nice to not have to drive 20 minutes or so, and just there's literally a Harrah's about 3 minutes from my house, where I can do everything but sports bet. So it'd be nice to add the sports betting to there. So hopefully that's a factual thing and gets on the ballot there, and maybe get some sports betting a little bit more locally, and then who knows, might be doing some remotes. You never know.
There you go. Yeah, we might have some new digs that you go check out and do some live bits for you. Yeah, that's interesting that it's on there, and I think obviously I would think a very strong chance that is something that happens. To me, it's at the point like just like a lot of things, like where if it's legal around you, why not go for it and give your state part of the revenue? Because that's what's happening. Like people are going somewhere else to find it, or they're doing it online in some fashion. There's just no reason to not have it available to folks anymore, especially when you're allowing all the other forms, like you said. Like, what is the difference at this point? Like, it's not a morality question because you're letting people do somewhat the same thing in other regards. Like,
Right.
just
Well, I
get
mean,
your piece of the
your
pie.
adult's gonna do it, whether you're an adult or not, I guess. But you're gonna do what you want to do anyway. So
Yeah.
might as well make it like we always talk about, above board. And I think the thing that will help with this, I do, obviously, the whatever a senator or congressman or has got to write the bill and get that thing going. But as far as like the maybe the what's kind of behind it, and the grassroots effort, if you will, is I think FanDuel and DraftKings are both pretty solidly behind this. So that doesn't hurt, especially when you got probably at least one, if not two new stadiums coming in. Be nice to slip a little sports book in the. I know
Mm-hmm.
when I was probably a lot of people know this, but I hadn't been down there in the area for a while. But when I was just in Wrigleyville, I know they got a DraftKings sports book right there in the stadium. So let's go ahead and maybe add one of those to one of the new stadiums they're building here in town, and we'll get this thing going the right way.
Yeah, usually when you got a team in your town that's won a couple of Super Bowls back to back, that kind of drives interest a little
Well,
bit. So
I was just kind of almost like I was almost kind of like just like comical to me, but how was every time that it will either extra point or a field goal, either way, but the shot they have is the biggest sponsor you can see is Bet MGM, and I'm like, bro, like you can't even bet in
you
this
can't
state
do
where the
that.
game's being played, but you got because and I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying like if you're gonna advertise for it, wouldn't you think you'd have that
Yeah,
option of it'd be like, oh, Bud Light, oh, you can't buy it here, but you can just look at it.
yeah, it looks neat, right? Uh, wild, wild the things that happen. But that is on the horizon. We'll see that change happen here, I'm sure, very soon. And it is cool to see some of those new places start to open and thrive here across the region. That's what we have for you here this week on the program. As we mentioned, it'll be college football time next time we talk to you, so we'll be making some picks. Keep our eye on the social channels. We'll throw some stuff out at you at SGM Bets, at Cherokee CP on Twitter. And then, of course, you can follow us along over the podcast and all the various platforms, Spotify being our main home, but you can find it in all the locations. And then, of course, we do have the YouTube channel as well, where you can both listen to the podcast and then catch our videos that we'll throw at you from time to time as well, making some of our picks. So we hope you do that. Hope you interact. We do put polls up on some of those as well for you to check out. And then, of course, feel free to shoot us a message on social media, and we'll take whatever interaction you have, whether it be picks or suggestions. So we'd love to have you do that. That's SG Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week of Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.